series for 2016. Today we are joined by the presidential campaign of Mr. Donald Trump. USINPAC, Congressman, is a bipartisan organization started in 2002 after 9/11, and we have been conducting these presidential series, and this is the fourth of our race. And just a little bit of intro. We represent over 3 million Indian Americans, a growing number of election states, especially Virginia, Florida, California, Ohio, Nevada. That's where most of our constituents stay. And we predict this is a close election, and a lot of Indian Americans are actively watching. Today, we are joined by Congressman Duncan D, who represents the 52nd District of California, which is east of the beautiful San Diego. He's a San Diego native, and he started his career like a lot of Indian Americans, designing websites, building e-commerce system. But after 9/11, he quit his job and joined the Marine Corps, and he served 3 duties in Iraq and Afghanistan. Thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you.
He was elected in office in 2008, and so, sir, I'd like to give the floor to you for brief remarks, and then we'll probably get questions from our audience, and then I'll pose those questions to you.
Okay. Well, hey, thank you very much for having me. Number one, it's probably not the best thing, but when I was a kid, my dad growing up, I had to read a lot of Rudyard Kipling and Churchill, and I love India based on that. And it wasn't the greatest times for India with colonialism and so forth, but I've been up a few times, really enjoy it, just enjoy the history. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. A lot of challenges in India, especially in the rural areas, but it's a great nation, and I'm happy to be on the call with you. I endorsed Donald Trump a few months ago. I'm his congressional co-chair for his campaign here. So in D.C., that means I just talk to other members of Congress, answer questions they have about the Trump campaign, and get them to come. And we have a weekly meeting here where we meet with his staff, and Donald Trump comes in. We talk with them and just kind of stay abreast of what's happening and what his plans are. And I'm also the chairman, the honorary chairman for Veterans for Trump. So in California and throughout the nation. So gonna doing a lot of talking and helping out in that respect too. So we're, I endorsed him, just starting off. I endorsed him because I believe in his three main priorities. They're my 3 main priorities too. Border security. I'm from San Diego, right by the Mexican border. You have more murders in Mexico per year than you have total Iraq since 2001 because of the narco terrorism. It's a dangerous border area, as much as the media likes to say it's not. So border security, national security, free tours, as you mentioned, and trade. I think trade is a big issue. Probably not the happiest issue for India and other countries, but I think it's time that we made some better trade agreements than we've made now. Again, when we signed the North American Free Trade Agreement under President Clinton, San Diego lost thousands of jobs and millions of dollars to Mexico. The manufacturing sector just left Southern California down to Mexico. So that's kind of, those are the 3 main reasons that I support Trump, and I try to articulate him as best as I can, because he's not always the most articulate guy. So with that, I'm happy to be with you and take any questions you have and just talk about whatever it is you like to talk about.
Thank you, sir. So I have I'll start off with an initial one about Indian American is primarily a business community. So can you please elaborate on Mr. Trump's or President Trump's economic policy initially?
Yeah, frankly, I think he's got it all cleared up yet. See, here's the issue with doing this stuff. He's not a politician, and he has a plan which I'm actually not paying a lot of attention to it because he doesn't put a lot of stock in it. it lowers taxes for middle class and lower, but it raises taxes at the high end. But even he said last weekend on George Stephanopoulos that it's not set in stone, it's grammatically, but basically it comes down to this. There is going to be some tax increases on the higher end, but in exchange for that, the middle class, the working class are going to have tax cuts. That's about as deep as he gets. He has it kind of laid out, but he's not sticking to it, if that makes sense. He's going to leave it open for negotiation with the House and the Senate, which I frankly think is a much more reasonable approach to doing tax reform than saying this is my plan, it's set in stone, and this is the way it's going to be. That's not the way that he does business. He's very logical. He's a businessman, and he's ready to negotiate because the House of Representatives has to pass this. And we already have a tax reform package that we've done, and whatever he presents and whatever we present, that there's going to be massive changes done to both, so we can find common ground and actually get a tax reform package done. So the answer is he's got nothing right now to set in stone.
Thank you, sir. We have a question from Ela Dutt, one of our constituencies. She's Mr. Trump has always talked about building of the wall of illegal immigrants. So the question is, what is Mr. Trump's views on legal immigration, especially with countries like India, who have huge backlogs, of H1s or the regular family types?
Sure. So when he talks about the wall, if you've ever been to San Diego, we actually have about 12 miles of border fence in San Diego. So we have a quote unquote wall. It's not a wall, it's a fence. But so beyond that, legal immigration, he's all for it. In fact, what he said is there needs to be a timeout on people coming over from the Middle East, people coming over from Europe, where we can't tell whether they have allegiance to the U.S. or they're an Al-Qaeda or ISIS affiliate or al-Nusra Front or any other kind of a bad organization. I think all he's really talking about in terms of stopping immigration are the folks coming over that are from Muslim descent and are part of the Muslim religion, trying to get a handle on what's going on right now with ISIS. And I think it's a smart move. There's nothing wrong with timing out legal immigration from those countries while working on the backlog. And it's not just from India. There's a backlog from where the world coming in. So the legal immigration system needs to be updated while we fix, based on current threat environments from ISIS and Al-Qaeda, while we fix the other side of legal immigration and people that get expedited visas from Europe. But I mean, he's actually said, it's kind of funny, to tell you the truth, it's hard to do them because he's actually said a couple of different things on H-1Bs. And they came out originally totally against the H-1Bs and upping the number, and then he came back later and said that he's more amenable to keeping that number high, and he understands the need for high-skilled workers here in the U.S., especially in the tech industry.
Sure. So thank you,
this is hard doing this for him because he hasn't answered all these questions, right?
Right. So I'd like to hand it over to Mr. Sanjay Puri, our chairman of USINPAC. Sanjay, if you could take over. Sanjay, are you in?
And I can't wait till we can. I can't wait till we can do this later, a couple more months from now, when his positions are much more staked out, and because they're going to be laid out a lot better. They're not all laid out very well right now.
Congressman, we have a question coming from a caller from New Jersey, and he would want to know that how would US-India relations look under President Trump?
I think they would look the same as they are now. I mean, one of the strongest things we have with India. I was over there a few years ago, and Boeing was over there. I think the relationship between India and Pakistan, I think that's the overarching question on what do we do with Pakistan, and how do we help India check Pakistan while at the same time trying to help the Pakistanis check themselves. I think that's number one. I don't think that changes. I think the question is, it's not a question. I think India as a democracy, as a free country that's going through a lot of reforms right now, it's our job to help them, especially when in terms of Pakistan and Pakistan's unfriendliness to the United States and what we've been doing in Afghanistan. Number one, I think overall. Number two, Trump's going to lead from the front, meaning he's going to come out and say, look, we want what is not only in the best interest of other countries, not just India, but countries throughout the world, but it's got to be in the best interest of the United States. And that's going to be something that's a little bit new. I think for a long time we've been putting, and this is not necessarily concerning India, but we've been other countries ahead of us, as opposed to reaching true mutually beneficial agreements with nations. I think that'll be different with the Donald Trump presidency. I think it'd be America first and foremost when dealing with any country, whether it's China or India or Norway. That's what I think the big change is going to be. And again, I don't think he has personally talked about what he sees between the U.S.-India relationships and changes coming up, if any. But these, once again, these are all going to be questions that he has to answer, and he hasn't yet.
Great, thank you so much for that.
Dolly has a question. Go ahead, Dolly.
Congressman, just I'm in LA and lovely to have you from California. So, and I lived in beautiful place, San Diego, for 2 years. So, very, very beautiful. Good to have you. I have a question in extension to what you just mentioned. Like you mentioned, that Pakistan, of course, has been involved in supporting terrorism against the U.S. in Afghanistan. Of course, President Obama has recently approved a big military package to Pakistan, including the sale of F-16s. What are Mr. Trump's view on this?
I don't know. And again, it'll be fun to do this a few months from now when Donald Trump has kind of laid out his positions. I don't think he's ever talked about our military sales or a military-to-military relationship with Pakistan. I don't think he's talked about it at all. So I have no idea his kids. My take, which is not his take, is that the only relationship that the U.S. really has with Pakistan is from our military to military. That's kind of the only way that we know what's going on or have any influence there whatsoever is our military sales and our military to military relationships. Beyond that, we don't have much, as you know. So if we want to have any influence there at all, and I know it's a sticking point with India, but if we want to have any relationship with the Pakistanis at all, right now the only that we have to go down it is the military to military relationship. But again, Donald Trump has not talked about this.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
So I have another question from another of our caller from New Jersey. President Obama had several high-level positions occupied by qualified Indian Americans. Would a Trump presidency also consider some of those?
I have no idea whatsoever.
So okay, so
he hasn't even. Think about this. I mean, Donald Trump hasn't even put together people that are going to be in his administration yet. I mean, even for vice president or other positions, he hasn't come out and said anything about that, nor has his campaign staff. So I mean, I'm just telling you, it'll be an all-inclusive administration government. I mean, we don't care, frankly, what people look like, the color of their skin, or their gender, or where they're from. It's all for the nation. I mean, it's whoever can contribute to the country in a positive manner. I think that's who we're going to bring on. But he hasn't laid out his hiring of anybody yet in any form.
Thank you, sir. So This is coming from the New York area. New York, obviously, New York, New Jersey has a lot of Indian Americans. So the question is about this temporary ban, which Mr. Trump has talked about. You know that India has the second largest major population, Muslim population, next to Indonesia, where a lot of majority of the Muslim population are moderates and they peacefully coexist. So we'd like to see how that ban, or how his relationship would be with the Muslim world.
Sure. So call it this. Call it a timeout, because things have changed since
Sure.
ISIS, and frankly since 9/11. The United States has not gotten a grip on how do you tell if someone's coming over from Syria, and say even a Syrian refugee or a Syrian or Iraqi that is in Belgium or France or Germany, or name your European nation. How do we tell that the ones coming here, the people coming that are Muslims, have a loyalty to the United States and are not coming for nefarious purposes? That's what his timeout is all about, because we aren't on this yet, because we're still allowing people to come here. I don't think this is not an issue when it comes to India or any other developed industrial nation that has people that want to come to the U.S. through legal immigration. I think it has a lot. And there is no way to prove what someone's allegiance is. And I think until we kind of get a handle on that and make sure that people come in here, especially of religion, that they are going to be friends to the United States. I'm not sure how you do that, but there are ways to be loyal to the country, and they want to be good law-abiding citizens, and they're not here as a sleeper cell be activated. I think that's a big issue, and I'm not sure how you do it, but I think it's a good thing to make our immigration process, make sure that there's nobody coming to the United States legally that wants to do harm to America. I think that's the whole key. And there's got to do that, and I trust him to figure out what the.
Thank you, sir. I understand the immigration part, but we're also talking about, say, 1 billion Muslims around the world, or say, there is a sizable minority in the U.S. too. So dealing with that Muslim population.
Yeah, you have to realize. There's two people, though, that when you have these mass cities in the United States, when you have these shootings, it's one of two types for the most part: either mentally ill or Islamists. That's that we have here in the country. So the key is to make sure that the people coming into the country legally are not going to be raised or are not already, and when they. It's different coming from a place like India, because they have backgrounds with the United States and ICE and the CBP. They probably have contacts in India. They talk to person's background, through background, family, friends. It's easy that way. That's probably not gonna change. What when we allow people into this country from, like I said, from places in the West Asia or Europe now, where there's no background documentation at all. There's no way to check. There's no way to check history. There's no friends or family that can be talked. There's nowhere that do bad things here in the United States. I think that's the big difference. If you can do a background, I mean, if the person's from a first world country and you can do a check on them, that's not going to face probably not going to change.
Right.
It's coming where there aren't background checks and you can't do anything. You can't tell who they are or where they're coming from. That's what's going to.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. So another question we have is from our folks in California is they're asking about the key differences between the key Trump presidency and Secretary Clinton's campaign. What are the key differences?
Probably the first three things that I talked about: trade. On national security, I think Hillary Clinton probably pretty good. She was the Secretary of State, obviously a senator. She has a lot of she knows a lot about national security and foreign policy. I think she would have a bad policy. I think Benghazi. I think that a big. She's much more knowledgeable. Lead from the probably not be as militaristic as Trump was as president. When it comes to tax, you're going to see when Trump's out with his whole tax package, and she comes out with hers. What they think helps the economy and how they're each going to tax, and whether they want a growth, entrepreneurship, and personal responsibility. I think Donald Trump's plan will show, and I don't think Hillary Clinton's plan. I think she's kind of she believes in higher tax and the U.S. government doing more things for people. I think that's going to. The economy is the biggest difference between them, even though neither one of them have totally laid out her tax up, and so is he. But in terms of their philosophy on what and looks everybody at while you're doing that. That's probably going to be more a businessman understands the importance of the American middle class, and that the key is not giving them things, but giving them opportunity that they can succeed. I think that's going to be the main going forward with them. Probably.
Thank you,
border security. I think she's for. That's a really easy one.
All right. So thank you, sir. I think Dolly has a question. Dolly, please go ahead.
And Dolly, hey guys, I'm going to have after this question to be asked.
Sure. This is going to be a last question, Congressman. I have a quick question. Mr. Trump has been accused of not being great in terms of relation with women. How do you respond to this and shed some light with recent media coverage and interviews?
First, repeat the first. Ali, could you repeat the first part of the question?
Sure. Mr. Trump has been accused of not being great in terms of relation with women. How do you respond to this in terms of some recent media events and interviews?
Sure, I think number one, Trump's a businessman. He's not a politician, and I think he's an equal opportunity offender. Meaning, I think as a person, he kind of sees people, and he talks trash to men and intimate things, Steve, things that are. But I think he's just as to guys. To ladies, if that makes sense, in terms of people working, he's been called completely fair, in terms of working for him and the relationships that he has with both and men. I think he's totally fair to everybody. But what he says, that when he says things to women, it's perceived badly. But if he said the same thing to me, just be part of life. I think it's more in perception than in real that he feels towards women.
Thank you, sir. So I'd like to make this the last question. So do you have any parting message for Indian American voters, and as why Mr. Trump is the best candidate, and can you also provide directions on how the Indian Americans can be engaged in Mr. Trump's campaign?
Sure. I think first and foremost, when Donald Trump talks about making America great again, if you America regain its prominence in the world in terms of being a force for good and equality and those things, if you want to see that happen again, that's why America great again. If you want to see the United States push back on what the Russians are doing and the Chinese are doing, if you want to see our middle class in this country and manufacturing in this country re-engaged again, where people actually start creating wealth and making things, I think that's really the core of his campaign, is how do we put America back on top again? Because as you all know, it's a big world. You have a lot of nations in this world, and I think it's okay to say there's a reason people want to come to this country. There's a reason that America is still what Reagan called the shining and the housing crisis that we had. We're a great country, probably the greatest nation in the world right now in terms of freedom and equality and standard of living for everybody. And I think he just wants to make us greater. I think that's what his campaign is about, is how do we put America first again, and how do we put the American people first again? I don't think it matters whether you're Indian American or my wife is Polish. It doesn't matter if you're a Polish American, if you're Chinese American. I mean, that's not what Republicanism is about. Being a Republican is about, frankly, not seeing color, not seeing race, not seeing gender. It's about treating everybody the same and realizing that we're all Americans. We may have come from somewhere else and have priorities with different countries too. But in the end, we're Americans, and we need to come together to make America great. I think that's his message. That's why he resonated with me. I hope that you can get involved right now. His campaign is at its early stages, meaning he's just now starting to get his campaign apparatus together. So I don't have any good information for you on who to contact besides going to his website. Once things play out more, I will have a lot more information. Tax in people's areas, whether it's New York or Jersey, that they're going to have campaign offices in those places specifically, and I'm happy to get that information to you when I have it.
All right. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. We are going off air now, and again, good luck and best wishes for Mr. Trump.
Hey, thank you. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you, sir.